to read and learn more about the history of Heber. Technical difficulties. Read and learn more about.
Oh, yeah, sound.
Now we do.
Okay, now we do. Sorry, we were just. It'll
just
be a
talking.
reading. It'll be a lip reading, educational.
That's okay. Well, this will be the.
All right, let's jump
That's
into
gonna
it.
do it.
So we're talking about the Heber Leadership Academy project. It's a Heber historic tour, and we've got 34 different properties throughout central Heber. They really started with the original settlers.
Yeah.
So I was just talking about John Crook, who the Crook cabin, which was at the homestead, was dismantled. Alice Hicken has been a great advocate for that cabin, and the school district will be rebuilding that, or Alice Hicken's family will be rebuilding it at the school administration building.
Oh, they're not. I thought they were going to rebuild it over there at the homestead.
She really wanted to keep it, bring it back to.
Oh, okay.
Back to Heber.
So sweet.
Yeah. So
yeah, and this is.
Yeah, these are beautiful.
Really cool.
So the Heber Historic Preservation Commission, Shauna Bennett, Ron Carlisle, Kent Berg, they really were the pushers of let's create something to commemorate the original Wasatch High School, which was located at the Main Street Park, which was torn down for the high school that you and I went to.
Yep.
So,
and it's been torn down.
It's been torn down. So the old high school. So this will be a monument at the park commemorating that historic Wasatch High School in the center of town. Then the Central School, which I also went to,
which is
where the public safety building is. So this was the one story.
Oh, that's right. Where the Heber police station is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So these two monuments will commemorate two buildings that have since been torn down. And then the Heber Historic Social Hall, which is where Timpanogos Valley Theater is. Yep. And the historic Wasatch Stake Tabernacle, which is where the Heber City offices is.
Okay.
So those buildings obviously are still here, and they've done a fabulous job renovating them. But it takes a lot of money to keep these old buildings functioning. So if you go to, we'll just highlight a couple. So Heber City awarded the Leadership Academy the funds to move forward with production on Tuesday. So that's a big win.
Yeah.
This allows us then to create the plaques for the 34 locations, and these plaques will be placed on the properties so that people can read more about the properties, the families that moved here, the original settlers. We'll also have a website on Preservation Utah and an app. So you can get more information and more photos. So that's what the team right now, the leadership class is doing, is going and finding photos that we can use on the website. So it's a really amazing story of Heber. And it's all between really 1860 and 1920. This original, kind of the original founders of the valley.
I love this.
We need to get Frank on, my dad again.
Yeah.
Because I think he was around at that time.
I love this because they do this in Logan, Utah.
Yeah.
And my great-great-great-grandfather came from Denmark, landed in Logan, and started a shoe store. And they've got one of those commemorative plaques right there for his Justin shoe store. And I love it. I think it's going to be great for people who come in to learn the history, but it's even more special for those of us who frequent and know here and like can have that extra little touch.
For me, I've lived here my whole life and I've seen these buildings every day, but I don't know the history of it.
And John, just go through a couple of those pictures, and I just want to highlight. So the second ward, which is now the St. Lawrence Mission, beautiful building. If you go to the next one, the North Elementary School. So as I mentioned, second grade.
I have outside the front door one of the radiators that came out of that school.
That's so cool.
By those radiators.
And I'll tell you what, it could be an anchor because it weighs, I swear, 1,000 pounds.
Right. So just flip through those. The Abram Hatch House, which is now the Encircle House. Yeah. It's been renovated and restored so beautifully. It's just such an amazing piece of art. The Wasatch Saloon. Okay, this building. Tink's
Bar.
This, I must say, has been the most popular building as I've been working on getting the stories. So many people have stories about Tink.
Yeah.
I never went to Tink's.
The only
I don't
time
believe that.
The only time I went was they would, when they had it actively, I mean, it's now the
Public
Melvin's,
House. Yeah.
but I can remember, kids going, "Oh, I went and played pool in the back."
Well, the Clyde kids, especially.
Well, of course.
And it's funny because on Facebook they were the first ones to say, "Oh yeah, that's where I had my first beer."
Yeah.
But Tinks really was the place where the kids hung out. A lot of the underage, take a sip here and there.
Sure.
What's interesting historically is this is one of the few alcohol establishments in Utah that from 1904 through today has been a place of alcohol service. You think of Utah, they even talk about prohibition.
Yeah.
Like they still served it during prohibition, even though this was and this was a very LDS community. So it's got some fun history. And I love that it's been the Spicy Lady, the Angry Bull. Melissa and Mike have done a great job, and it's a really good business with good food, sports bar.
And I mean, growing up, as somebody that's LDS, and people are like, wanting a sports bar.
Yeah.
We go in there and have a burger, and we can go in the back, and there's TVs everywhere in there, and every time I walk in, I think of Cheers, because when I go in, some of the same people are right there at the bar.
That woodwork is original.
Oh,
it's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
So as you're going through these, there's just story after story after story. Dr. Werrett, which is the Center Street and 3rd East, Vicki and Dean Todd live there.
Mm-hmm.
This was a doctor that was here for 49 years practicing in the Valley, was the only doctor. He was servicing Tabiona, Duchesne, Hannah,
holy cow,
and actually passed away as a doctor, had a heart attack.
You imagine wife going to labor in Tabiona, and he's in Heber, and he has to trot out there on a horse or a buggy. 3 days later, the doctor shows up.
Every one of these homes have such an amazing story, and I have loved getting to know the current property owners and hearing their stories. The McNaughton home that is on Center Street, this is still in the McNaughton family 7 generations later.
That's cool.
Where is that one? Is that on the east side?
So no, it's 215 West
Center. Okay.
It's got the big window, which you can see in the picture. It's just so fun I talked with Hi McNaughton, and she was so proud that this is still in the family, that a granddaughter and husband own this. The Abram Hatch house, and then Judge Abram Chase Hatch. So father, son. There were quite a few father-son combinations. John Crook and his son, James William Clyde, who was the first mayor.
That's the one just south of the park.
Yeah, this is now a ski shop. They just opened. What I thought was so interesting is how many of these homes have been converted into commercial buildings, and I think that's what saved them.
Yeah,
so you look at the McDonald home, which Pure Haven is in, the Isaac Baum house, which is right next to Timber Ridge Dental.
Now, if Carl Malone would have been able to save that home, that would have been another one. But I get it. When you go in there and they go, man, this is going to be like millions and millions and millions of dollars to renovate.
Yeah.
I get it.
But it has truly, for me, illuminated the history of this valley, the original settlers, and the importance of really showcasing these homes as part of our history. My hope is with this tour, it becomes a place where the locals go and learn more. Yeah. People that are moving into the community become more endeared to those original settlers and maybe the sacrifices that they endured. Those first winters had to have been so hard.
Oh,
so this is the John Crook home. And just a beautiful architecture. Was built in kind of 2 sections. It's got sandstone here, but then brick in the back. And, 26 years of journals. We really know what happened in those early days because of his writing. Every story is just fascinating. And I'll tell you, they're all immigrants. They all came from England, Scotland, Norway. They got on ships, and they're all Mormon. They received the gospel in their native countries
and then
came to Zion as that call from Brigham Young. There's even a couple that were part of Joseph Smith.
Can you imagine getting on a ship in wherever,
and 3 or 4 months
later, arriving,
landing in New Orleans, and then getting on a wagon or a handcart coming across plains, and then landing in Provo, and then there's no land. There's one story of Murphy. Let's see if I can find him. So this gentleman joined the church.
Can you imagine if I did that? It's got to be the carnival celebrations plenty of ice cream, plenty of water.
I mean, you ride a ship for that long, you're going to get out of shape, and then you get on and try to get on that wagon and travel that far. There's no way. Which house is that?
John Murray Murdoch. So there's two Murdochs, Murdoch with an H at the end and Murdoch with a K at the end. As I was researching this one, it broke my heart. But this gentleman was born in Scotland, was a sheep herder, and married, had 2 children, accepted the gospel, took 2 years to save enough money. They got on the ship. They ran out of food. They were malnourished. There was nothing left. He went to the ship captain asking for food. The ship captain was ill-tempered and told him to go away and just deal with it. Well, his 2 children ended up passing away on that trip. They get to New Orleans, and the ship captain says, "Sir, how are your children?" And he said, they're in the ocean, sir. They've passed away. The captain had no idea what was happening. And so John Murray Murdoch and his wife end up here. He ends up having 5 wives, 22 children, 94 descendants when he passed away. And I just think, and he came because he was a sheep herder. Yeah. He gets to the Salt Lake Valley. The winter before was a harsh winter. All the sheep died. So he's lost his children. He's come to be a sheep herder.
No job, no
livelihood. Gets to the Provo Valley. There's nothing. There's no land. They've homesteaded everything. Comes to Heber and just digs his way out. Becomes a very successful sheep herder, and was really the beginning of the livestock and the range that we have, that we know of, that happened for the next 100 years. But I think how much faith that these individuals had to take that call and come and settle here. And honestly, it has been really inspiring to just learn about these families. So that's what I'm hoping as people see these homes and learn about these families. I think in the 40s and 50s, they knew these grandparents were still alive. Yeah. And we've kind of lost that. As the community has grown and as people have moved in, they don't really know these stories.
Yeah.
And I really see this tour as reigniting this love for those original settlers.
Well, and maybe with us as the Wasatch Way Podcast, we can take and maybe even a little bit further as we do it and take the story and record it.
Yeah.
And, and put it on our podcast and stuff like that. And then people can go and look at it and listen to it. Because, this would be something I'd listen to. If somebody narrated the stories of these people, I would get on there and listen to it.
Here's what's interesting. Jason Moulton, Ron Carlisle, a group of the Sons of the Pioneers are actually doing just that. They're writing these stories. They're putting them on Family Search. And then just yesterday, they sent me a podcast of a story of William McDonald.
Oh, wow.
And so these are all happening, but it's how do we elevate it so that people can find the information?
Find it easily.
And this tour, I think, will be a nice kickstart. Yeah. So I just shout out to Heber Leadership Academy and the Heber City Council for supporting the project. So timeline, we will go into production. It takes 6 to 8 weeks for these plaques to be produced. And then the class will hopefully install in May. We'll do a ribbon cutting in June, and then it's self-guided. So you can go to Preservation Utah website or app for more details. We'll have more photos and such, but the plaques and the map you can pick up at the visitor center.
Now that one you have on, there's the Bennett family. Yeah. That's not George.
This is George. This is George Bennett's house. So this is Addison Higgins' home. Shauna, this is actually from Shauna's line. So if you
that's George's house right now.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that link again? I'm sorry.
Go to Preservation Utah.
Preservation. I'm just giving them the link.
Is that the back porch?
That's the front. That's the front corner.
Oh. PreservationUtah.com. I'm just giving them the link.
I think it's .org.
.org. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the link you guys can go to.
Yeah, but it won't be ready until June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So really fun. And then on top of that, so we started this project and I got really excited about it. And then I uncovered the George Strebel photo collection. So this is an individual that took photos for the Wasatch Wave. His daughter, Hilma Bellissima, lives here in Midway. And there's 1,500 beautiful black and white pictures from 1938 to 1955 that George took pictures for the Wave. And he was also an amateur photographer. So I ran across these photos on Facebook. I reached out to Hilma and I said, tell me about your dad. And she explained, amateur photographer, took all these pictures. They're all in negative form, and I'm having them converted to digital. And why? What do you want? And I said, well, I'm working on this project. Yeah. But it got me thinking about, this is all Pioneer. which is amazing. This is all pre-1900. But we've missed the rest of the story. Like Heber City from 1925 to 2025, beyond, when we can talk about high school or when our parents can talk about something, or, if you get on, you're from Utah or Heber Win, those stories, it's hard for you as a newbie to find out, well, tell me about what it was like in the 70s when they talk about the wagon wheel or Tinks.
Yep.
So I've started a second project, and this is Heber 100 Years. From 1925 to 2025, I've assembled a group of volunteers. They are each taking a decade and looking for photos. Tomorrow we meet to timeline this out. And what we're doing is trying to highlight within each decade some of the important points that happened in Heber. And the library is partnering with me. We're going to have this photo exhibit from middle of July to middle of September to correlate with the fair days. So I want to just do a shout out to Alice DeFries at Wasatch County Library, who has really been instrumental in helping me kind of get my head wrapped around how do we tell the story in photos. So I picked the last 25 years, and it's been interesting just in the last 25 years to see what has happened. We were talking about Cale Sanderson. He was a 4-time state wrestling champion here at Wasatch High School in the 90s.
A 4-year
collegiate, 159-0. He never lost a match at Iowa.
That's insane.
Then he goes on and wins a gold medal in the Athens, Greece 2004 Olympics. Of course, we have the 2002 Olympic Games here at Soldier Hollow, and it's been fun to try to find who ran the torch down Main Street. Do you remember the torch coming down Main Street?
I know Chris Weaver was one.
You really put him on the spot.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't remember. So someone actually directed me to Cheryl Hardy. So I called Cheryl Hardy. She is a beloved retired school teacher. She was a business teacher at the high school. And I said, tell me about carrying the torch. How did you get? And she said, well, I was she said, crazy story. My brother was actually a ski jumper and passed away. And so I was nominated to run in his honor. And she actually got to light the cauldron.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
And so all these things that I thought we have to include the Olympics, Cale Sanderson. How about the flood of 83? How about the storm of 94?
I can get you some pictures of my dad's mail Jeep.
Yes.
She was talking about decades, important dates. December 1973 was an important date. That should be included in your stuff.
Okay.
That's when I was born.
Oh,
that's a very important.
But I'll tell you, it has been, along with the pioneer stories, just thinking about, okay, if you were to say, what was the most important thing that's happened in the last 10 years here in Heber City? Even just from 2015 to 2025. So I was working on that last night, and it's like,
did anything I was going to say not in Heber. I mean, 9/11 was big, but that was national.
But
COVID.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably about the only thing. That's probably about the only thing I was response.
And it's been interesting. So Red Ledges was approved in 2004. It really started construction, and then 2007, everything was kicking off. 2008 plateaued. 2009 economic downturn. The Heber City did their general plan in 2003. Then we had Jordanelle Ridge, which was approved in 2020. I mean, it's been just facts.
So, we always
the fact that you can remember all those dates, and I struggle to remember my wife's birthday, makes me feel terrible.
We tease Andrew about Mayor.
Yeah.
I think Mayor Kahler has a really good ring to it.
So, hey, Cheryl Bullock Lobb.
Cheryl Lobb.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's not what I wanted to do. This is the one. She said that she has a lot of pictures and histories. So.
Cheryl, I'll reach out to you. She's actually in my neighborhood.
Well, and doing this, trying to bid this project over at River's Edge.
Yeah.
We were talking. I'm like, I haven't been to River's Edge campground since they built the dam.
Well, I was there for the powwow. Yeah. And then they did a couple of Bonanza concerts.
But the building they finished the dam when I graduated in 92.
All right. I'm going to take this blank space for 1 second. I want to apologize. It seems like when we started this podcast, the audio wasn't turned on. We got notified that in the comments. If you're ever watching this and you realize we don't have sound, I don't know because I'm not listening. I'm here on this side of it. Hurry and comment just like you guys did. Thank you very much. What we're doing is right now we're talking about the historic tour of Heber, going through all the historic homes.
Yeah.
Are we just doing Heber or is it Heber Valley?
So just Heber City for the Heber Leadership Academy.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Midway will have their own plaques and their own tour. I don't know how they're doing it digitally, but they have, I think, as many homes that they're highlighting as well. And that's Mike and Diane Glenn working with the Midway Boosters. Perfect. So what I'm excited about, we're using the same vendor, same plaques. They're going to have photos because the Harding Foundation was able to secure a lot of the photos of those original homes.
Sure.
I wanted to tell more story. So we're not including the photo on the plaque for Heber because I didn't want to cut anything from these family stories.
Right.
So Heber will just have the original homeowner. So like John and Sarah Carlisle and then Thomas
story.
And Sarah Moulton, and then their story and the origin of the house. So 1904, 1865.
But with the second project that you're working on, if there are pictures of these homes,
I will take. So the second project is 100 years, 1925 to 2025. We're looking for photos of those eras, and I took the easier years, not necessarily. It was just as we went around the table, I ended up with the last 20 years. But Bob Brandt is one of the volunteers. Mm-hmm. Bob and I met last week, and he has 1935 to 1945. And he talks about the CCC, the government, I forget what it is. I should have brought it with me. But he's got a picture of 39 men that were brought into the valley to help with the construction of canals. I think the Midway Town Hall was part of that. And it was amazing how many of those men stayed, married local girls, or brought families here. Yeah. And you see those families, Coleman and others that really started.
So I got to ask, is Peg Saby involved in this anyway?
So Peg, I've talked to. I need to reach out to her. When I initially reached out to her, she didn't have a lot of Heber City. She's got a lot of farms.
She got a lot of farms in Charleston and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I've reached out to a lot of individuals, and it's been funny because some people say, yeah, I've got those photos, but I got to dig them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Cheryl Hardy, who got to, was running with that torch, had to find those pictures.
Yeah.
So Alice DeFries and I have been talking about, we've not done a good job of keeping a historic record of the valley. And the library is going to do a better job of that now. She's kind of been tasked with that. And she's doing her Wasatch Wednesdays and telling different stories, which has been really good. But I'm hoping that this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the community will rally around the need to preserve buildings, photos, stories, that this really starts the ball rolling with how do we preserve our history?
I'll have to look into our stuff because my grandpa was here. I mean, he moved here, but we've got a ton of 10 millimeter film that I haven't ever seen.
Right.
And I was like, wouldn't that be cool if you're just reeling it and it's Heber?
Yeah. It'd be cool. It's like a popcorn.
I started thinking about it.
This is your chance.
Yeah. I started thinking about it. When's the last time Palace Drug was open?
80s. Probably.
I mean, I remember going in there and getting ice cream and a root beer float and,
Cherry Coke
walking the aisles, and it was just like you could hear the floor. The one thing I think I miss the most is the springboard floor at the senior center.
It's still there.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's Timpanogos Theater?
Yeah. So we used to do dances there, community dances.
So
man.
You guys were talking about that. Then my daughter did the talent show there after. Yeah. So I got there in the middle and I started jumping just to see if I could test it. That's pretty cool.
And we do dances there, and that thing can just sway and bounce.
And that's the Timpanogos Valley Theater.
Yeah. Yes.
They are so awesome. I love that building.
Yeah. So I've been busy the last couple months, but this has really turned into kind of this passion project because the more I get into it, the more I realize we have so much work to do.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for Christy Wright and Bob Brandt, Ron Carlisle, who is the chairman of the Heber Historic Preservation Commission, Sons of the Pioneers. They have their own little thing going on.
Yeah.
But they're back there helping me and sending me information like Jason Moulton.
They just keep you interested enough that you're just like, okay, I got to go this far.
Well, and I will tell you, when I put it out on, you're from Heber when, hey, I'm doing these historic projects, and I got a lot of people excited. But then when I said, and I need some volunteers, the volunteers.
Radio silence.
Yeah, it went a little quieter. So I'm going to put that plea out. If you're interested in history and want to be part of the project, I'll take photos. I'll take stories. right now we're just trying to compile all this.
Yeah.
And working with Alice, we've got a Google Drive that is open that we're sharing documents. But
Cool.
that was one of the big things that I wanted to put out the Wasatch Way is let's work together on preserving Heber's history.
Yeah. And that's part of, why we started the Wasatch Way is just trying to bring that kind of stuff, community, shedding a light on, interesting stories. We interviewed my dad, if you want an interesting story.
That was the biggest thing though, is like right now we're about to hit light speed in Heber. And everything is just about to skyrocket into change. And if we don't take the time now to make sure that we preserve that history, it might not ever happen.
Yeah. Well, and when you say light speed, as I've been doing this 100 years, Timp Meadows, which I think started in the late 1990s, the Timp Meadows subdivision was the first time that Heber proper was expanded. So Valley Hills was built in the 70s, and
that was where the elite lived.
Right, because you were on the foothills.
That's right.
They were just normal.
We won't say that. We won't say where Rachel lived.
Oh, that's why you say they were normal people.
This is what's funny. So then Timp Meadows is really the first expansion of Heber, and then Old Town became Central Heber.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing Coyote Ridge, Jordanelle Ridge, 8,000 acres, 5,000 home units. We've got Red Ledges with 1,200 units. So that's I'm doing this timeline, and we're starting to look at, these historic homes, and then kind of the slow growth that was happening between the 50s and the 70s. The 80s, we started to see more subdivisions. We've got cobblestone that kind of branches out in the county. Now you're seeing the Ivory home developments.
Yeah. And then Wheeler Park was, following that.
Right.
And
so the trailer park got taken out by Walmart.
When you say everything that gets sped up, well, and Walmart, that was interesting to look at the newspaper articles about. Matt Heimberger was very against Walmart and really felt like it would be the death of Heber. They were worried about the big box. And so there was a whole citizens against big box that happened, and it delayed construction of Walmart, reduced the size, and now everyone's complaining it's not big enough.
Right.
Then you have Smith's Marketplace that opened last July, 130,000 square feet.
I walked in there the other day, and there was an ice fishing tent and an auger, and I'm like, it's a grocery store.
Yeah.
They got ice
they're
fishing.
meeting the needs of the community.
Well, no, so in Logan, they have a Smith's Marketplace that one side is all just home goods and one side is the groceries. That's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
Well, and you're seeing it now. They were against Walmart.
Right.
And
I don't think anyone was against Smith's Marketplace, though.
I've got to ask, because I haven't heard. Okay. Is the Temple project moving along?
So I've heard that the decision needs to be made, or will be made, at the end of this month.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's in the county. My head is Heber.
Yeah.
I've got to keep it focused on Heber. But it's a good opportunity to transition into. So my role at the Community Alliance for Main Street is downtown Main Street. Revitalizing, which doesn't mean tear down. It means working with what we have.
Yep.
And that's where I really was endeared to the historic part. But there's also a point where you have to look at better uses for buildings. Better uses, again, doesn't mean tear down.
Yeah.
It means, is this the best use? Is this business, can it survive somewhere else that we can bring a downtown that's more vibrant?
Yeah.
And the city's been working on that for a couple years. I know Councilmember Barney went to Colorado and toured some of the cities in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I had an opportunity to go to Caldwell, Idaho this last summer with some of the city employees, and Dallin Kosher and Jessica Broadhead from the Tourism and Economic Development Office. And one of the things that the city really felt strongly about is that the Main Street Park is a passive park. So it's lovely.
Yeah.
And we used to play baseball there, and a lot of family reunions happened there. I remember when the park was redone in 2013, we did an unplugged kickoff there. We do the 4th of July Red, White, and Blue Festival that's now in its 4th year.
Yeah.
Market on Main, we're getting 1,000 people every Thursday night during the summer.
It's you look. Where they had the bandstand, before they started building a new one. And I remember going to concert in the park, it was concert in the park, and there was no market, and there was 100 people there.
Right.
Now you go, and it's like, holy crap!
Yeah. But it's the change of the dynamics. So it used to be an old high school. We don't remember that.
Yeah.
And then it was converted to a park. So we've had some concerns about changing the park because this is what we know.
Yeah.
And as I've been working with different property owners and even business owners and community members that are worried about change, and they say, leave the park, it's open space. And I get that. There's a better use for the park. And that's what I have this big plan in front of me on how can we make the park our downtown? How can we make a park where people come together and we see businesses thrive because the park becomes our living room, our center of town?
Yeah.
We don't have a downtown. We have a Highway 40.
Yeah.
But if we can look at our community differently, instead of how we know it now, and I'll give you an example, the blocks between the Heber City offices or the Tabernacle and then over to the park, it's a 2-block connector. So there's this concept of C Street, and it's not a street necessarily. We're talking about a pedestrian walkway, but we're really talking about conceptually, how do we bring people downtown? And how do we make downtown something that people want to hang out?
Yeah.
Right.
So right now we've got Thursday nights and everyone comes down and they hang out, but it's not really benefiting the businesses. You can talk to Chick's Cafe and they say, we might as well close. No one's coming to eat dinner on Thursday nights. They're all doing the food trucks at the park. Yeah. I want to change that. Yeah. I want to make sure that the consignment store, Chick's Cafe, Courier Collective, these cute shops that are on Main Street are seeing foot traffic. And we've got to look at downtown differently. So instead of, parking 2 feet away from a front door, we need to look at finding parking on streets, angled parking on 100 West. That's a big initiative of the city council this year. And as a community, we have to recognize that you may have to walk a half a block to get where you need to go. It's not a bad thing.
No.
And, leave those spots with the blue paint for those that need it. But the rest of us park a half a block away and walk.
Living where we live now on 3rd East, we'll jump on our scooters and meander down, the roads and that. So,
and I will tell you, this is not an easy idea. I've been talking with business owners and property owners. Some property owners are like, I've been waiting for this. I talked to a property owner who wants to be not named, but he's very interested in finding a better use for several properties that he owns on Main Street. He's owned them for 14 years. And he said, I've been waiting for the city to see a better use of Main Street. We're going to talk about the bypass later, but people get so caught up in walkable Main Street because that was kind of a thing that people kept throwing out. No one wants to walk on Main Street. But let's talk about behind Main Street. Let's talk about the betweens. Let's talk about 100 West. Dairy King has, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of visitors, maybe a million every summer. They're a destination restaurant. Yeah. The train, 120,000 visitors on the train last year. How do we bring those people into the community so that we're seeing success with our businesses and our retail spaces?
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a hard concept when you're not behind it. And if you're a property owner in that area, there's been a lot of people that feel threatened. Yeah. That say, you just want to tear down my building. And that's not, the reality is we need to look at a better use of the building because we want those property owners to be successful. And to be successful, they've got to have businesses that are successful. Yeah. So we as a community need to support those businesses, and that's foot traffic.
Yeah. Well, and I look at it, I've been around, Rifle, Steamboat Springs, and, I know everybody says Park City, and, we don't, there's a veil
wall,
right there. There's a wall built. Yes. But you look at Main Street in Park City. I'll bet this year a Sundance was probably good.
Because it was walkable.
There was no traffic on Main Street. I look at the car show. Mm-hmm. They can't fit all the cars in the park.
Right.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could shut Main Street down, back the cars in on an angle, and walk down Main Street?
Yeah.
And walk back down Main Street.
With a bypass, that's more feasible.
That's more feasible, yeah. But stuff like that, and I like it as, I think, I can't remember if it was Dallin or even somebody said the park needs to be used 6-7 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the concepts that have been presented, they had a Roger Brooks who runs a destination development. He's a contractor. He's out of the Spokane, Washington area. Roger actually secret shopped Heber in 2017 and gave us a scathing review. He came in and talked about our entryways, that we had old car lots and we had no signage. It wasn't welcoming. I don't know if we've improved those entries, those gateways, but Roger really gave us a lot to think about, because he said, he walked into stores and he said, what's there to do in this town? And the person behind the desk said, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have we improved on that? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 6 years managing the Ice Castles and Soldier Hollow and really working with the teenagers to help educate them. Don't say, I don't know.
Right.
What do? You go bowling. You hang out in the Walmart parking lot. You go to Dairy King after a basketball game.
I know what I do. I go to the rec center and I do burnouts behind your house at 3:00 in the morning.
Don't tell people where I live.
Sorry.
But I think it's interesting, because when you go on vacation, you want to do what the locals are doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's been a conversation for a long time. Like, what are the locals doing? And even if we're not doing it all the time, the crater is so cool. The train is cool.
Yep.
The bowling alley is so rock star. Like, we have these really cool things that are happening, and we don't do a good job of telling people.
Right. I can get that. Like some of my favorite things that I think that I've seen come through that TripAdvisor did really well on. Last one I was looking at like 2015, 2016, but like renting from places like Uinta Recreation, getting like the ATV side-by-sides and going out in the hills. That's important, because that's what all of us do.
Yeah.
We don't just stay in Heber. When we want to go play, we go out.
Yeah.
We go fishing.
Biking, fishing.
Well, and I mean, growing up, I was telling a guy this the other day. I didn't know Kanab existed because I recreate in Wasatch County. Why do I need to go somewhere else to ride my side-by-side when I have 360-degree mountains?
But the difference is, we would go and play, and then we would go to Dairy King or Snow King or the bowling alley. To really become a community, we need a place of gathering.
Yeah.
We need a place that people know, hey, I can go down to the brewery and I can see my friends and do trivia. And I think it's great. Granny's now is doing beers and burgers.
Yeah.
They have a beer license.
Oh, they do now?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
So Armando's worked hard for that. So
it's growing.
We have to adjust with the community that's moving here. I've had some conversations with people that have moved in just in the last 5 years. They love Heber, but they want to hang out in Heber.
I mean,
and we miss that.
I mean, cruise nights with swags.
That was fun.
Imagine the traffic being off of Main Street and cruising.
Right.
I mean, come on, Rachel. You know about cruising Main Street. I know about cruising Main Street. That is all we did. Stoplight. Go to the old Maverick. Flip around, Snow King. Flip around, go back.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
we did that during COVID. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
I feel like on Facebook sometimes we have a lot of people like, I wish we could have the old Heber back. There's a lot of nostalgia. Yeah. The reality is Heber's still here.
Yeah.
Those people are still here. We need to bring those memories back.
We got to create the culture of Heber to bring it back. And I really think COVID killed a lot of that.
Yeah. And that happened nationwide. Yeah. But as we grow, I don't think we've done a good enough job telling people what the vibe is.
Yeah.
So in 2013, I helped with Chief Booth and Eric Rowland. We started the Unplugged program. Mm-hmm. It was before you moved here. It was 101 things that you could do in Heber Valley. So I created the list based on things that I did as a kid. Mm-hmm. So hiking Knoblets, lemonade stand, floating the canal. Don't tell the water district.
They still do that now.
I know, but that was the thing. Is I realized putting that list together. Yeah. I ran the Unplugged program for 3 years.
Jeremy. We're playing footsie. Sorry.
We could do all those things.
Whatever happened to? I know. I can't remember. It's I don't know if it's before we moved back or just being back and forth. Whatever happened to the
brag tags?
That's
the Unplugged program.
Is it?
Yeah.
That needs to come back.
So here's what killed it: Pokemon Go. So we went from a program that was all about get off your devices. Oh, Eric Rowland, we sat down at lunch one day and we were talking about kids on devices. And this was before smartphones.
Yeah.
This was Nintendo and kids sitting in front of the
Commodore
TV.
64.
Right.
Oh, wait, I'm dating myself.
And he said, it's not enough for me to tell my kids to unplug if the neighbors are plugged in.
Yeah.
And so that's where he's like, I don't know what to do. And I said, there's 101 things that we could do in Heber that don't involve technology.
Yeah.
And we created this program. It lasted for 3 years. It was a great program. But I'll tell you, that third year where numbers started going down and I had parents saying, we're competing against Pokemon Go. Because Pokemon Go, you could be on a phone, you get points. There was all this, and it was all digital.
Mm-hmm.
And it just tanked the Unplugged program. But I think there's enough to do. And that's where I think the historic tour, but we have to bring these things back.
I agree.
Has there been any discussion about, I mean, you hear it on Facebook all the time, there's nothing for kids to do.
And
we need a skating rink. We need this. We need that.
So the park. So what's being proposed at the park is increase the amenities that are there. Currently, we have a child playground. What's being proposed is an ice ribbon, and then it would be a skate ribbon in the summer. So
path.
Instead of an ice rink, so not to compete with Midway's ice rink, but
so you're going to put in the whole thing to freeze it all the way around?
So they would do a chiller, and they would do a trail, an ice ribbon trail.
I actually saw on one of my boring, we talk about unplugging, and I was on TikTok. But this guy, it was a huge lake, and he shoveled like a 3-mile.
It was in Canada.
Or was it in Canada?
Yeah.
I don't know where it was. He shoveled like a 3-mile, like 3-foot path all the way around this lake, and you could just go skate.
Cool.
But here's the thing.
This idea.
We don't need to spend a lot of money for kids to get together. 2 things: food and entertainment.
Yep.
And entertainment could be live music. It could be a magician. Have you been to the hypnotist during fair days?
It's pretty funny.
No, because he hypnotizes me, and I don't like that.
So,
I don't
so
like
one of the things with the Community Alliance for Main Street that I've been tasked by the city is to bring more things to the new band shell. So Thursday nights are great. Big crowds. What I would love to see is Sunday afternoon jazz. I'd love to do more dog events. Can we do that at the park? Well, maybe we can start small. Maybe we can do a doggy parade. And if people
cornhole tournaments at the park on a certain night.
Cornhole tournaments, toddler time, Thursday mornings. There's so many things we can do. And the park really can be that gathering place. Yeah. The downside is it's outside. The library's done a fantastic job for little ones.
Yeah.
And I think they've got the coding camps, they've got the Lego stuff. There's stuff to do for kids and get the kids involved. I mean, the high school's got amazing things happening, but it's what do they do in the summer? We'd like to see the park be that place.
Be that place of, hey, we're doing Home Depot, you've been taking your girls over to Home
every
Depot doing
first Saturday. They love it.
But why not get some guys that are carpenters and have little projects that you can go to the park and build.
And I just happened to be talking to someone that just moved here from Arizona, and I told her that what I was doing, and she said, well, do you ever need help? And I said, actually, yes. I want to do kids programs. And she was like, that's funny. I just retired a gymnastics facility in Arizona, and that's kind of my thing is kid tumbling.
Roll out some mats,
right?
And
that'd be fun.
So I had this conversation today with a friend that sometimes you have to be willing to ask people, hey, what do you do and what do you like to do? Would you be willing to share that?
Yeah.
So these are the things I'm really excited about as we look at the park. The park plan could be a multi-million-dollar phased approach.
Okay.
If we really do the ice rink, if we can put they've got plans for some pop-up shops to allow for some entrepreneurs. Is
that kind of, when you say a pop-up shop, is it going to be a building that's
a building that somebody can come in and rent for 2 months and see if they want to try something?
So we got to get city council to allow the smoke shop.
Well, that's not going to happen next to it.
Dang it.
But
see,
what if I did 2 kinds of smokes, right? Barbecue out the front, cigars out the
back. No.
Damn.
Still.
How about tattoos?
Oh, that was a can of worms. All right.
So anyway, I am really excited about the opportunities, but I do think it takes a glass half full kind of person.
Has to be.
And I happened to have lunch with someone a couple of weeks ago now that as I kind of rolled this out, they said, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. They were poking holes in all this. And I said, I get that. And I get that it's going to be a lot of work and it could take money.
Yeah.
I'm not one to realize that Pollyanna, that we've got we've got to spend some money to make this happen.
Yeah.
We worked on the Community Reinvestment Agency. The city is still part of that.
Yeah.
The school district decided not to make a vote. It's a difficult decision anytime you're dealing with taxes. And Wasatch County Council at the time just said, we're not interested at this point. I think we can bring it back. The vote was really not a kill vote. It was a not enough
Let's
to kill
table it.
Let's table it.
Just table it and
So
bring it back
I think
later.
there's opportunities, but gosh, I would just love to see the community rally around this new band shell. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah. And that's a pretty, so I'm working over at George's fourplex that he's building over there.
Right.
And there's like on the west side, there's like a block thing with doors. Is that like dressing rooms, changing rooms, bathrooms?
It's more storage. Yeah.
For equipment.
Yeah, they're not putting in any sound systems or lights. If we're doing that, we're going to bring in rentals just because the technology changes so much. Atkinson Sound has really been an amazing vendor for that. Yeah. But my hope is to do summer stuff, and then I want to do winter. I want to put some bands up there and some heaters and some fire pits.
I happen to know a heating guy.
A heating guy. So
yeah, but do you know a good one?
No, I don't know a good one. I'll give you a number for a good one.
So I don't know. It's a lot, and I know people have kind of been like, "What is the city doing?" But you've got to have a vision, and it's got to be phased, and it's got to be what the community
I think this
wants.
the good example is. I mean, there were a lot of naysayers with a concert in the park.
Yeah.
Oh, it's never going to take off. People aren't going to come, and then it's like, well, you got to use local bands.
How about the beer garden?
That
I didn't think that was ever going to happen.
I thought that was just never happened, but it's cool.
It's great. I sat down with Greg Poirier from Heber Valley Brewery, and so Greg actually approached me and said, "Hey, do you think this would ever fly?" And I said, "I think it's important that we actually provide an opportunity for adult beverages."
Yeah.
Because what's happening is the open containers were rampant.
Yeah.
And so there
it was happening
anyway. So there was no control.
Yeah.
And by creating the beer garden and creating a controlled environment where adults can enjoy a purchased beverage, the city's actually getting tax dollars back. So it's this great cycle of Greg as a local business owner is coming in, he's controlling it, he's providing a good product. He actually emailed me a month ago and said, "Hey, can I expand my footprint? We've outgrown the space."
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm not on council anymore, but you can run that up the flagpole and see where that goes." But these are the things we have to be willing to sit down as adults, have the conversation, recognize, okay, the community 10 years might not have been ready for it, but the community that we are now was totally ready for it.
20 years ago, going in and saying, "Hey, we're going to put a beer garden in here." Yeah, sorry.
Right. But it's different now.
Yeah.
The other thing was when Trek started the bike fillet. Who would have thought that we had 30 or 40 bicycles that needed to be stored during the concert in the park? I mean, now you go. Now. And we love it because now you don't have to park cars. You've got bicycles.
Yeah.
So the community is evolving and changing, which I think is a great segue.
I was going to say, perfect segue. I was like the number one guy for 2 years saying, why can't we just say no? Why can't we just say no to growth? Just stop it. I don't care that it's been passed in the past. I can't, even though they've given a go ahead at this point, we're at the point where we need to say no. Why can't we just say no to growth now?
And I would say 90% of the citizens agree with you.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to say no. Everyone wants that gate that they came through.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well,
70 years ago, 50 years ago, 14 years ago.
You were talking about early settlers. That was a big pain point is like, we're local.
Right.
We've been here forever.
7 generations, the McNaughton family have been here. So we'll get down to the nitty gritty, and I don't want to dive down too much in the details because there's a lot of legality that comes with development. Mm-hmm. The first thing you have to understand is land use.
Yep.
So every community across the United States has determined land use. Wasatch County is the land use authority in our county, and they really had a master plan, and they outlined this will be commercial, this will be residential, this will be agriculture. They've got different land areas. You've got P160, so Wolf Creek Ranches, 160 acres, one building, or maybe a caretaker's home. 160 acres. Who can afford that? Not me.
Not me.
Now you've got
John Bliss maybe, but not me.
Right. Now you've got 5 acres with one home. So that's more doable. When my parents moved here, they bought 5 acres. My dad built his own home. You've got quarter acre.
Yeah.
Now you've got townhomes. Now you've got apartments. You've got condos. All
Stacked
this has
flats.
been laid out. So the problem occurs when the land use is established and then you have entitlements. So the entitlement is really what's gotten us in trouble, because entitlements could have been given in 1996 with no end date. Or in the case of Red Ledges, they started in 2004 as a county. They wanted a few more houses. They went to the city. The city said, you're close enough. We'll annex you in.
Sure.
And so that's where you started seeing this annexation. And what's interesting with the county and the city, because let's face it, the county is basically the Heber Valley.
Yeah.
We have a fairly large county. We go all the way up to Soldier Summit.
Yeah.
We go all the way over to Woodland. You go up to Wasatch Mountain State Park.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty wide, and then up Wolf Creek just to Hannah. So you've got a lot of land. We've got Wasatch Mountain State Park with 25,000 acres of open space. You've got the Jordanelle Ridge, which is over 8,000 acres. You've got 3,000 acres of open space. You've got BLM land, Forest Service land. So when we're talking about developable land, it's basically the floor, right? Some foothills. And we're starting to creep over.
Yeah.
But what's happened in the last 20 years is this annexation tool has really become, I think, kind of the sticking point.
Okay.
And I think Red Ledges is what started it.
Yeah.
They're now, I think they started with maybe 600 or 800 homes with the county. They are entitled just over 1,200 homes with the city. And in exchange, they did a trail up Center Street. They agreed to put a road in. Funny enough, it took them 13 years to put that road in. And that's the
new one.
That's the Heritage Farms Parkway Road. And they agreed to not use Heber Valley Special Service District, but put a pump house in and actually push their water treatment facility up to the old Highway 40. Yeah. So they worked in conjunction with Jordanelle Ridge to not use Heber Valley Special Service here in Midway, but to use the new facility. Yeah. They have yet to finish the pump. So they've been using Heber Valley Special Service District instead of diverting. So the annexation tool really has become the contention point, I think, between the city and the county.
I mean, and is that something, when I went to a couple Midway City Council meetings, was somebody puts a subdivision in and they promise they're going to put a playground and pickleball courts and, a pump station.
Right.
And the city goes, well, you've got your subdivision done. We're going to go ahead and release our bond or whatever.
But so the pump station, Red Ledges is 650 homes out of 12 or 700 homes out of 1,200.
Yeah.
So at some point, they should have hit that mark where they had to build the pump station, and they must have continued to get extensions like the 13 years it took them to build the road.
Yeah.
So where we're seeing the pinch point is the annexation of Jordanelle Ridge. So that was a developer that initially started with the county. It was land used. It was all determined, and there was a personality disagreement. And so Jordanelle Ridge, when I was on council, came to us and said, look, I want to be annexed. And if you don't annex me, I'm going to build my own town. And I'm big enough that I can do that because I've got over 8,000 acres. So you can either receive the tax dollars that I'm going to be bringing your way. And it was a master plan community. It's got the Tiger Woods Golf Course. It's got homes, townhomes up on the top. He's got a whole village that's coming. So it really was important for Heber City to recognize, if we give this away, these people are still coming into Heber. So the pressure is still going to be put on our police, our groceries,
all of our services,
schools, all the services. So we annexed. It wasn't, did not anticipate annexing the whole thing. In fact, when I was running and knowing that this was going to be a project in 2019, my thought was, this doesn't make sense geographically. Like, I can see this front end along Highway 40 coming into Heber, but over the hill and down on 32, that should be in the county.
Yeah.
But when the developer said, you don't have a choice. You take it all or none. And so that's when I realized sometimes you really don't have a choice. You cannot say no, because the developers are like, look, I own this property. I've been entitled already with the county. So you have a decision to make.
So what would have happened if he said no?
They would have created their own town because they had no interest in building with the county.
Now,
So how would that affect us?
So we wouldn't receive any tax dollars. So
but they would have had to create their own police force, fire, and all that.
Not necessarily.
No, they could contract.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's what Hideout did
Right.
essentially is
Right.
built their
Can
own
we
town.
charge them an impact fee for contracting with their own town?
No, you can charge contract fees, but you can't charge impact fees. So that's where we start seeing this problem. And you hear the council members now, who I think they do a good job communicating in the meetings. They're not so active on social media trying to explain and educate. And I don't fault them for that. I spent probably 20 hours a week when I was on council just trying to get ahead. And you're doing the big sigh because you and I really went at it probably for the first 2 years of my being on council because you kept saying, why are you doing this? And I kept trying to explain this project, every project had so many different nuances to it. And it's tough. It's tough when the public comes in during public hearings and they just say no. Just say no. We don't want this. We don't need this. There's no affordable housing. We can't afford our teachers. The schools are overrun. Just say no. And the reality is you can't just say no. Legally, you cannot stop this wheel that has already been set into motion.
Right.
And it's hard.
And you look at it, I mean, with farmland, I mean, the families that were farming and haying and doing this, they pass away. Well, do you want to farm it? No. Well, do you want to farm it? No. Do you want to farm it? Let's sell it.
Make money.
In comes Mr. Developer. And I don't fault that. I mean, people have made
really good money,
but I can't fault them for selling it. I wish it was open space.
And it's a property owner's right.
Yes.
And so what's interesting, you bring up open space. I'm all for open space. I think open space is wonderful, but I fear that if we continue to bond, we're going to create a tax burden to create open space that's being handed to private property owners. So it's not public land. And I think you have to recognize the distinction. So you look at something like the Swanner Preserve in Park City, public land. It was donated or purchased, I'm not sure which. They now have the Swanner Echo building that you can go in and learn about the wildlife. You've got trail systems through it. There's a benefit to the community. The Bonanza Flats, they did all the improvements for Bloods Lake and that trail system. Well, Park City bonded and their community accepted the bond and the tax burden to preserve Wasatch County. So they are preserving a little piece of an area in Wasatch County on their tax burden and giving public access. I think it's great that we're preserving open space. I think the Kahler Farm was a great use because they are a community farm.
They're a community family.
150 dairies were down to 2.
Yeah.
Kohler's, and then George Holmes just was put under a conservation easement. They're working towards that. And kudos to both of them for giving that land and preserving that land. But I worry as we continue down this road of preserving private property and handing $1 million checks, what's the benefit to the community except a view, an open space?
If it's going to be open space, it should be, and it's going to be, it should be public access.
Public tax dollars are paying for that open space. And I think there's a balance, but my worry is there is over 300 acres in the Northfields. If we just look at the Northfields as it is, and if you just did a nice oval, there's about 300 acres. Currently, based on what the school district paid for their property that they put their new high school, it's about $100,000 per acre. Well, that's $300 million that we would need to preserve, bond the entire Northfields. That worries me that we've set a precedent that conservation means bonding, means tax burden, and there's no public benefit. I think we need to figure out
realign that priority.
Right.
So here, I mean,
and that wasn't even on our list, but I don't know the right answers,
question.
But that's something that, as we've talked about, we've already spent the $10 million.
Yeah.
We've already allocated $10 million worth of open space bonds. And I think the Wasatch Open Lands Board has done a great job at weighing the factors. But $10 million.
So my question is, with the open space bond, didn't Midway just pass one?
Yeah, they had
recently?
$5 million. They've spent it. They've re-upped it.
So if a landowner says, I want to, have you purchase my land for open space.
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to build on, doesn't want to do this, is there anything stopping that landowner from saying, I'm going to donate this property?
No. And honestly, a lot of these are selling or getting the open space money at a quarter of what they could if they turned it over to a developer.
Because that's what I was like. I'm like, why are we paying? In some ways,
they are donating.
Why are we paying $1 million for this property? And when he could just donate it and get a tax benefit because it being donated. And I'm like because I'm going to have to pay taxes on that money.
And I would say, so in George Holmes's case, for example, I think George is a really good example of, he's got kids that he wants to leave something to.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could have just sold it out to a developer. And I think his kids said,
I know there's a property.
What's the value?
I know there's a property to the north that would just wish his farm would just go away. When you get those breezes that cross back and forth.
Aren't we glad we don't have the old high school?
Yes.
I got a pretty long comment here. Do you want me to read it?
Sure. Oh, Lindy.
So until the property tax issues are solved, it'll be hard to get the existing residential behind it. I'm assuming she's meaning bonding for public access.
Yeah.
We are getting squeezed from every direction. Many are retired on fixed incomes, living in their forever homes. Income barely changes every year, but taxes are skyrocketing. Just because you bought a $150,000 home 10 to 15 years ago, had an income to afford the taxes and house payments, you shouldn't be forced to sell it based on taxes and unrealized gains. It's still the same small, modest home. You still have the same kind of job and lifestyle. I could no more afford to buy a $900,000 house than fly to the moon. But I'm being forced to pay taxes on one. We want the old Hebrew back because we could afford to live and play here. Now we can barely afford to live and definitely not play.
Yeah.
I feel that.
That's a
I
huge
feel that a lot.
And Lindy, she articulated that so well because so the state, there's a couple things the state's looking at. One is, do we remove income tax? Do we just charge property tax?
Phil Lyman had a really interesting perspective on this. Mm-hmm. He thought as a state, we could eliminate doing income tax and fund it all through our natural resources as we sold them.
Well, some people have said we should start the lottery.
That was probably me.
They do in Idaho. Yeah.
So Utah's a funny state because we, were established by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the settlers, and they still have a dominant impact. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. It's tough to start trying to weigh in beer gardens and lotteries and do we allow for gambling? It's those kind of things that other states have adopted that have allowed them to pull back on income tax or reduce property tax. We're a state of children. And so we have this responsibility to provide a quality education. I just spent 4 hours with the school district, and I can say I'm really proud to be a Wasatch High graduate. And the programs that we had when we were in high school compared to what they've got now, it's mind-blowing. And some will say it's a lot. But for every kid that's there, there's an opportunity for it.
I drove by the high school the other day. They have a TV truck.
I know.
I was like,
we used to run the cable all the way down the high school.
I was going to say, hey, can you bring, we had 14 people on the cable and somebody with a camcorder going, I'm going to video this.
That was me. So I don't have the answers. And Lindy makes a great point. Yeah. We are seeing our taxes increase. Let's be honest. We are Park City Junior.
Yep.
Park City 4.0.
I remember 30 years ago listening to Park City as they struggled with mining was going down. They didn't know what to do. Skiing was their salvation.
Yeah.
The ski resorts really changed the dynamics of Park City. And I remember hearing the locals say, we're getting priced out. We're getting taxed out. We're moving. We're leaving Park City because we can't afford to live here anymore.
Yeah.
We're seeing that same thing happen. I don't have the answers, but I want to work towards better solutions. And I think rather than people getting on and screaming on Facebook that their council members aren't listening to them because they're allowing for the growth, they need to understand that it's not that they're allowing for the growth. It's part of property owners' rights. Land use authority gives them the opportunities. And when someone comes in and proposes a project, the city council has to listen to it. The county council has to listen to it. It could be totally crazy out there, but they have to listen to it. And those are the projects that sometimes people just say, are these guys nuts?
Well, and I think a lot of it is, people are like on Facebook, the city council, the county council, the city council. Back in our day, we didn't have
Facebook.
A link that you could watch it live on the computer.
Right.
You had to go to the chambers to listen to it. And people are like, well, I don't want to go do that.
And very few people did.
And still very few people do.
Well, I mean, I remember that was the number one thing I was always told is, well, why don't you show up to meetings? Because I work. And my boss says, I can't walk up to Jerry and be like, hey, I need to go to the city council meeting. Well, this person needs heat. So,
Well, Dan Lyman said something the other day that I thought was very interesting because he has really put some interesting ideas out there. And he said, we elect officials to represent us.
Right.
The hard part on that is, yes, we were elected by the public to represent. We're also sitting through these meetings and understanding the legalities, the land use codes, the state regulations, what we can and cannot do legally. So while the community elected those officials, sometimes the community doesn't understand the ramifications and the parameters of the decisions that those elected officials are faced with.
Then you look
But if those elected officials care enough, they need to be on social media sharing the behind the scenes on that of why they're choosing.
But it's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, then don't take the job.
Well, and that's
okay. Then you run for city council.
Look, there's going to be a level of transparency.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got to understand why these decisions were made, not just that you're not listening to us.
Right.
And just because you're tired of hearing the voices saying you're not listening to us doesn't mean you get to now just not listen to us.
So let me ask you this, though. Is social media reaching? I mean, you and I are on that because I believe in social media. I think it's a great avenue to communicate. It's also a very difficult avenue to communicate a very complex problem. And that's when sometimes I can put all the information out there, but you can't get into those nuances.
Well, you can't. I think it's with social media, unless you're flipping somebody the bird or doing all these emojis, you can't get
emojis.
Oh my gosh.
Yay! You can't get the emotion behind it.
Well, and you sometimes misinterpret what someone
says
easily,
or someone that doesn't communicate
here's
does verbally.
I was in a dealer meeting for some of the products that we carry yesterday, and one of them they were doing something. Did I do this? And it went again.
Yeah,
sorry. Does the city have anybody? I mean, they have a
public information
officer.
Yes.
Is that something that we could maybe go and say, hey, can you take the city council notes and
but the minutes are already public. They're public information. The minutes are public information.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did when I was on council, because I'm a communications person, right?
And I can say when you were on council, after a meeting, I was like, I got to check Facebook and see what Rachel said because she just lined everything out.
Right.
Whoa. I just had an alignment here. You're the reason I changed my whole perspective. You know that, right?
No.
I think I've told you this.
Oh, yeah.
I was driving down the canyon and you were on the radio. I was driving in your little van.
Yeah.
And she was on the radio talking about something. I was so mad when I first heard the subject. And then to hear you describe it and explain it in the back end, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. That's what we need on social media. Yes. And I think people like Tori E. Broughton, who does these minute and a half digestible, understandable videos. There's no reason that in this day and age with the technology we have, you guys can't hire somebody to just do quick 90-second videos of breaking things down of why this is this way, why we can't do this.
And I don't want to say my defense, you got to dumb it down for me. And I don't want to sound bad that everybody needs to have it dumbed down, but it's got to be dumbed down to where people can understand it.
Here's what you have to understand. So the elected officials are part-time elected officials. Yes. They all have other jobs.
Yes.
And I think that's why I was burned out after 4 years. Because I really felt the responsibility to be that communication tool to help educate the public on what was happening. Between the airport, Jordanelle Ridge, bypass annexations, North Village, we tackled a lot of big projects. Envision Heber 2050. in 4 years, every meeting was a 6 to 8 hour meeting.
Yeah.
And I took notes on every single one of those and then followed up with a radio report, a 30-minute radio report after every meeting.
Yeah.
Because it was important to me that the public understood, because I was so tired of people saying, well, they must be taking money out of the back office.
I get so tired of that.
And I
can get two people.
I get so tired of that.
I took on a couple people, then said, hey, I've never done that. And I can promise you the other 4 members of this council are integrity, honest.
Yes.
You might disagree with what their decisions are or their perspective, but nobody is taking money or bribes or on the developer's payroll. It's such an ridiculous and unfair accusation, and it still gets thrown out there on Facebook.
Well, I sit there and look and go, okay, here's the city council and, the county council. I'm like, if they're taking money,
they're not getting a lot of money.
They're not getting a lot of money, but I look at some of them and go, if a developer, you look at Congress and political stuff and everything like that, and all this special interest money, they're living high on the hog. I don't see any of the council members living high on the hog.
It is not happening at a local level. Yeah. I can promise you, not in my experience. Yeah. And that's where it's so offensive when you spend so much time researching and reading. Sometimes we had over 300 pages of reading. So, we get the files on Thursday for a Tuesday meeting, and it's 100 to 300 pages of reading. I'm telling you, these elected officials, they don't have time to run back to Facebook and try to educate somebody, the keyboard warriors. And I get it. You're frustrated and you have an opinion and you just want to say no, but there's so much more to it.
So as a city council elected official, what was your stipend? I don't want to say paid because you guys put in way more hours.
Right. No, 18,000, and it's everyone on council made 18,000. The city council a couple years ago, there's boards that you serve on. Tourism board, Heber Light and Power board, sewer district board, airport board.
18,000 a year.
18,000 a year, including your board stipends. And Heber City just amortized it across. Everybody made the same. Even though the Heber Light and Power board, which I served on for 4 years, is one of the most complex boards of any of the boards. Heber Valley Special Service District, I would not want to be serving on that board right now. There's utility issues that this valley is going to be facing in the next 4 years. And you are having a communications major or a housewife or an engineer or a financial planner that's having to make decisions on nuclear power. Like, I'm so grateful for people like Jason Norland, the general manager of Heber Light and Power. Every time an elected official comes on his board, he spends the time to educate. This is what we've done. This is where we are. This is what's happening next. And I would actually like to see a change in those boards. I think it's important that we not only have elected officials, but we bring in professionals in the industry.
Yes, somebody that's their specialty.
Right, because whether they have a vote or not, you're asking elected officials to get up to speed in a matter of days sometimes on issues that are really mind-blowing. So when I was on the Heber Light and Power board, the line and the substation had just kind of happened. So Midway had fought it for several years. They didn't want it. And the line that came along Highway 40, it's interesting. A lot of people look at that now and say, why didn't we bury the line? As I understand,
I remember that fight.
If I remember the numbers, it was $4 million down to bury it and $1 million up. And at the time, the board, which they made the decision before I was on, they had the money to put it in without bonding. So I think they paid $4 or $6 million to put just that 4 or 5 miles in. They would have had to bond for like $24 million. And
to
again, to bury it so that you save the view.
I remember that.
So these are tough decisions. And sometimes I think, put it to an election. If the power board had said, let's vote. If there's enough people that are willing to spend $24 million to bury a major transmission line, this isn't just a neighborhood
This
line.
isn't just digging in your backyard and catch a 110 line. This is like light it up.
But then the question is, can you educate the public enough? And are they willing to spend $24 million?
Well, and you look at it, I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to spend $1 million to run these lines down. But if we got to spend $24+ million to dig and bury everything.
And then maintain. And every time the power goes out, you've got to get a backhoe. You've got to dig down into it. Your hours of service getting that line back on.
That would be terrible.
Instead of an hour to 3 is now.
And think of the moisture level in the dirt that they're putting it in.
So that's, I'm telling you.
Taxes would have been astronomical and nobody would have went. Oh, heck no.
So another thing that I have seen a lot of people throw out is the developers aren't paying the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Or
fees.
Let's do a moratorium. This is my favorite.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's do a moratorium until we can get caught up. Well,
You're going to catch up.
Legally, you can do a moratorium for 6 months if you have a reason. If you're updating code, if you have to dig a new well because your water system is no longer enough.
Yep.
You have to have a reason. You can't just say, hey, the community wants to take a pause, take a breather.
They need a vacation for 6 months. Sorry, guys, you're not building anything.
Well, and they cite examples like, well, Oakley did a moratorium for 6 months.
But they didn't have any water, right?
They didn't have any water. They had to do a moratorium because they had to dig a well and bond and put a new water treatment in.
Yep.
So there's reasons behind this moratoriums, and it's 6 months. And the reality is it doesn't
6 months
stop.
isn't anything.
It doesn't stop growth. Yeah. The buildup happens, and as soon as that moratorium is done, and then the tradesmen can't keep up. So
which is still going on.
It doesn't help. What we have to do a better job of understanding the projects, the project scope, working with the elected officials to say, hey, I know that this development's coming in. Can we make sure we get a public park or a trail or the North Village, which is along Highway 40 around the Wasatch Commons area? For every ERU, there is a $2,500 fee. So any developer that wants to build in that North Village pays $2,500 per unit. And that money is supposed to go into the preservation of the North Fields. So rather than bonding and creating a tax burden, we're asking the developers to pay into a fund so that we can buy development rights off the North Fields. That was something that the county, when they put the land use in for that area, because they were the initial commercial's going to go here, residential's going to go here. They allocated about 1,800 units. City annexed it in. When we looked at the development, it's about 2,000 units, but we added a trail that's going to go all the way up Highway 40. We added another road that's going to connect. That's if there's an accident on Highway 40, there's going to be a secondary road that you can jump off on Molten Lane and come all the way up. Now, that could be 20 years before it's all built out. But these are things that the city, 20 years forward, were able to say, hey, this is important, that the county didn't. No one was thinking about trails and access and public parks and development rights. So, it's not easy.
I don't envy her job. I mean, she's got energy to do this, and I'm sitting here going, I'm going to go home, and it's drinking from a fire hose.
No longer on council, but I respect those that are on council. Our elected officials work so hard.
I think the other thing that I look at is when people are going, you guys are doing this, it's the same 10 people. But when you're elected, you're representing how many thousands of people?
18,000 people.
18,000 people. So you're 18,000 people compared to 10 that are loud.
And Facebook doesn't always represent the community voice.
Yes.
And
despite what people think.
Right. And I totally respect those that are willing to put themselves out there and poke. There's a few that I've never met, and I know their names, and they spent 4 years helping me sharpen my saw. I knew that if I didn't have the answer, this person was going to grind me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is not okay, and you didn't do this. And there was one instance where I had somebody mad about some trees in a park that had fallen down. Well, the city decided, hey, we need a 9/11 project. And I was like, we need to replace these trees. And I actually got my neighborhood so the city donated the trees. My neighborhood planted the trees. And I never heard anything from that person. And I thought, I did this for you because you were so critical of these trees that had died in this park. And I don't know if they even noticed that we replaced the trees.
Yeah.
And so often, you're jumping because of critics and criticism, and they've moved on to the next.
They've moved on to the next problem.
Yeah. But I want to talk about the bypass.
The bypass.
Let's go.
As we're wrapping things up. So Tori did a really nice recap. That if we can play that.
Heber City Council meeting, February 18th. We got a UDOT update, and it's a big one, but kind of a small one. So you can see all these steps here, all these steps. We're all the way down to level 2 screening. We've gotten so many steps done. There's only a couple of steps left. So as part of the level 2 screening, it is environmental and regulatory impacts, where they will be looking at the impacts on wetlands, historic properties, archaeological sites, the sewer farm, things like that. So that's what they're doing now. And what we can look forward to is the next step, which is refinement and engineering, or refining the engineering, which means they're so close to bringing us some examples. And Craig from UDOT thinks he's going to have those for us in mid-March. So we might see some new alignments. Well, the refined alignments as early as mid-March. So we really will have something to talk about then. If you see some graphics going around that show circles in the alignments, those circles are not roundabouts. Those circles indicate intersections where there will be a grade change for cross traffic to either go under Highway 40 or to go over Highway 40. That's part of the free flow alternative, so that any traffic on 40 won't stop. So I've been seeing out there a lot where people are posting photos with no context. A circle is not a roundabout. It is an intersection on the free flow option that will have a grade change for the cross traffic. If you have any other questions, you can go to the link in my bio or shoot me a message. I've heard a lot of these presentations and I might be able to answer your question.
So a couple things. Tori has moved to this community and inserted herself into becoming educated about these really important issues. She's attending Heber City Council and Wasatch County Council on her own accord. Sitting through these meetings, learning and educating. And I'm just so grateful for these little videos.
She does incredible.
That really are capturing some really complex issues. And she's trying to, again, distill it down.
Dumb it down. You can say it. She dumbs it down so I can understand it.
Tori, I hope you're watching, by the
way. Right. So the Heber Valley Corridor project has been discussed, as far as I have heard. Catherine Berg, who is 87. I probably shouldn't say
87,
her age.
88. Older.
She said she remembers it being discussed as a child. Kent Berg, who was instrumental in Wasatch County.
We can say his age. He's probably in his 60s.
So he said he remembers it in high school being discussed.
I mean, I think I remember it. I mean, being discussed
what I can tell is, like, in 73, there were actually like some drawn plans that you can find. And then again, in the 90s, there was a discussion about the bypass going up on the east side. And I remember Terry Lang coming to my dad and saying, hey, I want you to know that we're not going to do this because it would impact you. It would impact your home. And I was a kid and I thought, great, I don't know what that means. Where the bypass really has become a hot topic, I think, is since 2018, 2019, when Mayor Kelleen Potter went to UDOT and really asked them to put together a team to start the EIS process. And it wasn't until then that we really had the political push to go to UDOT and say, we think this community deserves an opportunity for UDOT to come in and study and give us a plan. And that plan was supposed to take 5 years. And obviously, it's taken longer. The pandemic definitely slowed things down. But there's a lot of feelings about the bypass. And what I think is interesting is I think there's more people that are saying, what has taken so long and when is it going to happen, instead of the other.
It used to be nothing, but we're not doing a bypass. This isn't happening. We're stopping.
We're going to sue everybody and we're going to put a kibosh on. It's not going to happen. We're not going to do it.
And I will attribute two things to that. One, obviously, the accident where we had a teenager hit on Main Street last year. Thankfully, she has recovered, but that's a life-changing event. And when we were young, we had a young lady that was killed with a tire that came off of a semi and hit and killed her.
Whoa.
And it sticks with you. Like it's something that.
Well, just any of the accidents. I can remember probably your graduation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't on Main Street, but Brian Norton and 2 or 3 kids were Andy Corey, and that messed, and he still suffers from a lot of that. You know, it's just.
So I think safety, I think there has been a shift because that accident last year really rattled people, and just the amount of traffic. Last summer, I remember emailing Craig Hancock and saying, this summer feels especially oppressive. It feels like you can't cross Main Street without a light.
Yeah.
You can't even, no one would dare take a left, but you certainly aren't going to try to go through Main Street without a light. And just the amount of traffic. And I would attribute it to growth, internal growth, but also just community growth around us. Yeah. People moving from Provo to Park City to work. Of course, all the traffic that we see in the summer, the campers,
the weekends,
and then the semis. And there's data that will support, we're looking at 40,000 vehicles a day on Main Street.
Crazy.
So I think I see that in the morning going to Park City.
And you see that, you're seeing this solid line going out, solid lane coming back, but we're feeling it on Main Street. Yeah. And it's impacting businesses. It's impacting our livelihood.
Look at, the high school. Everybody's like, we'll close the campus. That's going to be really tough to do. But right there, I feel our neighbor is a crossing guard, and she works that Main Street thing. And they finally put a cone in the turning left from Timberline, because people would cross and they'd pull out there and wait in the middle of the road. And it was like, that's an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah. So it's been interesting as UDOT has progressed through the process. So 2 years ago, they gave us 5 options. Mm-hmm. What they're talking about now, and what Tori did a great job describing, is the 5 options are still on the table. They're now modifying those options. And that's because the data that they were using didn't have all of the growth projections.
Gotcha.
And number 1, they didn't have the East Village. They didn't have the residential. Yeah. And I think initially there were only 4 or 5 hotels. There's now 9 hotels projected in the Deer Valley East Village. So that's going to impact the number of cars that we're seeing on Highway 40.
And you think about it, each year that this is delayed, the whole picture changes.
And the cost increases.
And the cost increases. Right. So every year that it goes, or every 5 years, your traffic increases because we've built another 1,000 homes and another 1,000 homes. And so it does need to happen. Yeah. I drive in and out of the valley 2 or 3 times a day, and there's times it's better than others, but in the morning and in the evening, if Dad will say he'll look out his window and there's a stream of traffic coming all the way up from the canyon, but that's people coming up here to work.
Right.
They live in the valley and they commute.
Yeah.
And we get stuck in it.
So I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the concern about the North Fields.
Sorry.
No. The North Fields. And I have been really transparent about this since 2019 when this plan really started to come together. I think it's important that we're building a road that is going to service this community in the long haul.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion of a loop, and we see 900 North, which is the Smith's Marketplace light. And initially there was conversation about just looping from 189 to that 900 North and just getting, opening up Main Street downtown, pushing that traffic into this loop, and then bringing it back on the north end and then sending it back north Highway 40. The problem with that is it's short-sighted. And I know people are going to be mad about this.
Yeah.
It's short-sighted because of the number of units that have been approved in the North Village. So all the properties above Highway 40 around the UVU Wasatch campus, Coyote Ridge, Jordanelle Ridge, North Village, there's just a lot of density. There's 2,000 units, which could equate to 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 people. And my worry, if we just loop it, and we talked about this earlier, is If you look at something like Bangor Highway, which when they initially built Bangor Highway, it was 45 miles an hour, light, 45 miles an hour, light. But what was happening is people were going 65 miles an hour, blowing through their light, crashes, accidents. The worry with not seeing the long-term solution and just creating the loop, because that satisfies saving the historic downtown, is there will be enough traffic coming off of Coyote Ridge, the UVU campus, the developments that are coming in the next 20 years, that if we don't create a long-term solution, all we're asking for is accidents.
Right. And North Highway 40 is bad for accidents now.
And like the same feeling that we're having right now about the growth and the having to change our plans with everything. If we don't do what you're talking about now, they're going to be in the same position 10, 20 years from now.
I mean, we talk about our kids and, legacy and stuff like that. If we kind of figure it out now, they don't have to deal with that later.
Right. What I thought was interesting Tuesday night at Heber City Council's meeting. So Craig Hancock is the project manager and has done a good job at being non-emotional and presenting the information. But what Tori was talking about there with the flow, and this is something that I think UDOT has really evolved as they've listened to the community. One of the concerns, obviously, is the semis and the oil tankers that are coming out of the Uinta Basin. They are only going to use the bypass if it's faster.
Yep.
I've had an opportunity to talk with the Utah Trucking Association, and you have to understand that we're not talking saving 10 minutes. When these guys, the truckers, are talking about saving time, they're talking about minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
They'll take an alternative route. In fact, they told me that one trucking company, I think it's CR England, actually awards every quarter a Harley Davidson to the trucker that has shaved the most time off his route.
Yeah.
It is so important for the trucking industry to get from point A to point B
as fast as
that
possible.
they will take the bypass to avoid Heber downtown, because what we're seeing is backup at every light.
Yep.
So what we saw on Tuesday with the flow, and this is something that UDOT has kind of been talking about the last couple months, to me really makes sense. That they're coming in on the south end, and let's talk about one stop. And initially the conversation was, are they coming to the intersection at one stop and then making that turn, getting on 1300 South?
Yeah.
Right behind the neighborhood. A lot of neighbors are concerned about that. Yeah. Then they've got to work through the sewer fields, around the sewer fields, not through them. So you've got to protect the sewer fields, because there's some EPA issues there.
There's some issues.
And then we're paralleling Southfield Road. Now you've got Midway Lane. Is that a stoplight, or is that a
bypass
over
or an overpass?
Are we doing a flow again over?
Oh, people are going to be so mad about that.
But we're talking about safety. But we're also looking at. So
I'm okay with it. I don't live in Midway.
You got to have off ramps and on ramps.
Yeah. This is going to be incredible.
It's so complex and expensive. I mean, one of the estimates I saw for one of the plans was $220 million. But let me paint this picture.
Do you remember when they put in that stoplight in Midway and people would just blow through it and protest?
Stoplight.
Well, hopefully they're stopping.
The stoplight down here.
People just drive straight through it. They didn't care if it was right or not. They were protesting.
When they put the stop sign up on center further up, I don't know how many times I blew through it, because I wasn't used to it being there.
But now you are.
But now I am.
Now you're a good citizen.
Yep.
So I think it's
now
important
I honk before I go through.
Oh, gosh. I think it's important that when we're looking at these plans, we don't look at the now.
Yeah.
We try to look at the future and the 20 years and
why we're doing it.
And these traffic engineers, they're looking at data. I appreciated what Tori said about they're looking at the historic significance. They're looking at the EPA, the wetlands. There's so much that they're factoring in, and they're also taking the emotion out of it.
You have to.
They have to. So in 2019, this was before I was elected, that I really felt strongly that this bypass needed to go up the North Fields. My recommendation was to use the Northfield Road that you can see on 600 West.
Yep.
I've had someone tell me, well, you can't use that road because the farmers need to access their fields. But now you see it, they're paralleling that road. And then you've got a modified plan that actually cuts back at Potter Lane and reconnects. Now, there is an intersection that's planned for just below the substation, just north of Potter's Lane. And what you're seeing on that is the flow reconnects at just past Potter Lane, reconnects to the Highway 40, and then works its way back up. Right. I think it's important to note that one of the best ways that we can conserve and preserve the open space in the Northfields is by working with the federal government. This is a U.S. highway. This is a United States highway. This is not Heber Road. This is not a state road. It is U.S. highway. Therefore, it should be available for federal transportation funds, which I think we could look at for both construction and conservation of those lands. We talked about earlier about open space and possibly $300 million. Well, if we can tap into federal transportation dollars, why couldn't we, as part of the project, say, we understand that this road is necessary. We also want to make sure that this area does not fill in with commercial or residential.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't.
Therefore, we can both preserve and create a road that takes the pressure off of downtown.
I like that a lot.
And creates a community that is safe, effective, long-term planning. I mean, it's not the most popular comment. And, I went out in 2019 and when I was running, I had someone bring that back up and say, but you said, and I said, and I stand by that because I don't have anything to lose or gain. I just want to make sure that as we grow, we're creating an environment where we can preserve our community, downtown Heber. We can create a thriving community and create a safe place for our kids.
Well, and look at Bangor Highway when they first built it. You had to cross at a light, and it was dangerous. Now they have, for this, a walking path that goes over top or goes
$1 million
underneath.
walking paths.
Yeah. They build $1 million wildlife crossings.
Right.
So
how long? I mean, we've been here a while.
We've been here a while.
Almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours, but
I got to say,
we had a lot of people.
Carson Bothorpe says hi.
I will come around and read the rest of it. John Bliss, you're looking sharp, buddy.
Yeah, the new haircut's been
good. Sherry Lobb again. Coyote Ridge Parkway and 40 scares the hell out of me. I go Valley Hills to downtown. Yeah. And Tori was applauding your whole talk about the bypass going through the Northfields. Yeah. And so I think the one thing, and this is how I think this is perfect to wrap it up. This is what we do every time is in the next 5, 10, 15 years, the valley as we know is going to be relatively unrecognizable. Mm-hmm. It's going to grow. It's going to change. But that doesn't mean that we have to. Yeah. I mean, we have to grow as people. Yes, I'm not going to inhibit that. But we don't have to change how it feels. I still want to walk into Walmart and make eye contact with people and say hello and not have the rude, condescending things I get in Salt Lake because people think I'm creepy because I'm making eye contact.
You look at them and they're like,
but
be a good neighbor.
It doesn't hurt to
people.
Wave.
Yeah,
I walk my dog in my neighborhood and I wave at everyone. Hey. My kids think, Mom, you're so weird. We waved at everyone.
I tell you, we go to Wallsburg to do a job and you're driving in Wallsburg and everybody waves. Everybody waves.
All know each other too.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I'm driving in there and they'll wave and I'm like, first time I went in there with Anna, it's like, do you know that person? I'm like, no, they just waved. But she's from Camas and they all wave.
Right. I mean, the community is going to change, but it's the people.
Yeah.
And that's why as the community grew, there was this welcome to the valley. Let me, you need something, you need eggs, you need hay, you need a tire change.
You got eggs? I need some eggs.
I don't have eggs.
Dang it.
I'm wishing for that. But, it's the people. And I think you came around, originally you really were like poking me and I don't think this is right. And
I think there were times you came to work and it was just like, God, I saw this on Facebook or I saw this on here and, and I'm the same way. I mean, with Tori, I was very against the duplexes on First West and First East. And she made a comment when she was running that said, I own a bike shop. If I want to live in an apartment or a condo, I've got to ride up 40. Where's my, I'm at Coyote Ridge or I'm at Wing Point. Mm-hmm. And it's just not safe. Right. And I was like, I get it now.
Tori and pre-COVID John would not have got along.
No.
And I think it's important John. Also, we don't have to always agree.
Right.
It's just open dialogue.
And I appreciate Lindy's comment. She was one that she had a lot of questions while I was on city council, and I appreciated those questions and tried to answer them the best I could. And there were some times where people just said, we're going to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's an important adulting kind of thing that we also need to acknowledge.
Yeah. But just because everything as far as like building and growth changes doesn't mean that we as a community have to change.
Yeah.
I love this place. That's the reason I've stayed here. That's the reason I've found ways to stay here, because 2 years ago I wasn't making it here.
Yeah.
Like,
No. I'm sorry. You were probably working for me, and that's when you weren't making it here.
Well, I don't know if we've
60 hours a
solved
week.
any of the problems, but I hope that the information has been good.
This was a fire hose.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was.
I love it.
But like I said, I think it's just educating people. It's just trying to educate people and dialogue and discussion. And like you said, we don't have to agree, but there's no reason for name calling and no reason for throwing inflammatory accusations out.
Not everybody's a crook. Just because
Yeah.
they're in the government doesn't mean they're not a crook. And I'm saying that to myself.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I think better solutions are created when conversations about hard things are had.
Yeah.
And I have seen that with the current council, with the council that I served on. When you have public input and when you have people that are really willing to dig in and do the hard work, that's when you get a better outcome. And it doesn't have to be an elected official. And I took a break after my term, and it was 8 months before I attended a city council meeting, and went to that meeting and saw the plans for Central Heber, and they weren't what the plans were when I left. So just in 8 months, they had some radical changes that really set me back. And Tori and I had conversations. I met with Tony Kahler, Mike Johnston, Matt Brower, and that's where the historic idea came to me, because I realized that there's going to be a time where I wasn't a decision maker, but it didn't mean that I didn't just say, well,
I'm going to throw my hands up.
I can't control that. Because what I realized is, while I'm not a decision maker, I can make a difference.
Yep.
And Tuesday night, when they approved the cost for the historic tour, it really was a personal win, because I felt like we can make a difference.
Yeah.
But we have to find the ways. It may not be in a zone or a development, but if we can hang on to those things that we cherish. And I didn't know that I cared so much until I realized I want to preserve Heber. And if this is how I preserve Heber, through buildings and stories and photo collection, it may not look like the Heber we grew up in, but I still want to create those things that we can tangibly hang on to.
Yep.
So I know we've come full circle, and anyone that's still listening,
we actually have more now.
Yeah, we actually have more now than we had before.
So. 3 things. Sherry says you need to run again. I think you need to run for mayor.
Mayor Kahler.
Let's, Sherry. So as I understand it, the council will vote for ranked choice voting, which means you don't throw your hat in the ring until August. So I have a daughter that's still in high school, and she has been pretty adamant that I'm not a good mom when I'm a politician, and she's my number one. So she's a sophomore, and I'm going to try my best to be a mom first.
3 years.
So we'll just say that, but thank you. I appreciate that.
We can hold out for 3 years.
And then Tori.
Thank you, all 3 of you, for continuing to inform the community in a logical and caring way. The Wasatch Way. Hey.
And just I mean, a quick, I don't know how many community news we have. The Horsemen and Killers were big. Wasatch Way is a big proponent of that. April, I think it was 26th, is their Love Giving Back dinner. I know they got information on the golf tournament already up where you can reserve your spots. I want to actually give a shout out to Liz Johnson from here in Midway.
Liz Johnson Roberts.
If I say Bart Johnson's little sister, everybody will know who she is. But she had breast cancer over the summer, and she just had a tumor taking out the 13th right back here on her side. They're still waiting for pathology to come out. But I'll say it, this chick is a warrior. She had the surgery, was off all the medication in 2 days, and was released from the hospital like day 3, day 4.
Whoa.
And she is, I mean, just fighting an amazing battle and fight. But if you guys see her on Facebook, She's one that there's a Facebook page called Liz's Brain Tumor, and she updates the public on her
All right.
on what's going on, and everything. But
good morning from the tumor.
It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor.
Well, and I will add, so I had an opportunity to travel with Liz.
Mm-hmm.
So she has a little travel company,
Yes.
and my husband and I, with some fellow midwayers, went to Switzerland, and she was our tour guide, and she was fantastic.
Yep.
So I highly recommend, if you're looking to travel
Yeah.
as a group and don't want to make any decisions and just want somebody else
Yeah.
to worry about all of it.
And I know she's canceled like the next years
Right.
of stuff, but she's hopeful.
Yeah. She's
She's
fantastic,
hopeful.
though.
But yeah, I see her posts on the traveling, and I keep telling my wife, I said, we need to sign up for this. We
it
need to
was really
sign up
fun.
for this.
Highly recommend it.
And
So Liz, keep fighting.
That's
then-
for you.
Thank you.
Stickers still on sale.
Yeah.
Proud to be from the Heber Valley. There's an HV. All proceeds go to support the podcast, bring us to you guys. We're already doing a lot on the back end, trying to bring in quality
Yeah.
stream to you guys. Plus, we're available on Alexa. We're available on Spotify. We're available on Apple Music. So just walk up to your Alexa and say, Alexa, play the latest episode of the Wasatch Podcast. Mine's going to say it at home.
I was going to say at home, Megan's going, shut up, Alexa. Alexa, shut off. Shut off.
Well, you guys are awesome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
doing this, and just
Thanks for joining us. Will you be back?
I'm always happy to. I love Heber. I love talking about it, the programs that we're doing, the projects that I'm working on.
If we
So-
can
I
do
wouldn't
these
do anything
frequently,
else.
it wouldn't be a fire hose, right? We can
Right.
start doing these like little bite-sized pieces.
So with just kind of little side thing here, because I haven't been to the Leadership Academy in a few weeks, months, when will your project be kind of online again?
So it will install in May.
Okay.
So we're in the production phase right now. And I will say, if there's anyone out there that has a historic home, we're ordering a couple of extra plaques. If we can get to 40 locations before we go to production, that would be awesome. Right now we're at 35.
Sweet.
So if you've got a home between 1860 and 1920, give me a shout out. Find me
Mine
on
just
Facebook.
missed the cutoff.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm going to go out there and look at, my guy said the roads were pretty crappy, but maybe that was coming back from Park City. So.
Well, congratulations on the official longest podcast we've ever done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And probably the most viewers we had on a live.
Yeah. That was really good. Towards the end, we got a lot.
Wasatch Way.
Appreciate you guys. Love you. Tune in next week, hopefully, next Thursday.
Why does Carson Bothorpe says she's always free? Who's Carson? Is that
He's
your
my
son?
nephew.
Oh, he's your nephew.
He
Who's is
must
that?
think you don't know anything.
Mark's.
Is that Mark's got two, right?
He's like 28.
Oh, is he? Mark. Oh,
Yeah, you're old.
okay.
Hey,
I'm
thanks
old.
everybody. Thanks for
Love
listening.
you guys. See it. Oh, it's not gonna.